will start coming. You'll see people running in the streets. There's a big sense of anticipation, I'd say. There was kind of an understanding that the first evening it was very unlikely that we'd see white smoke. And even this morning, a bit more chance, but still, probably most people were expecting to see black smoke. Whereas now, this evening, it feels like this is the first time there's a real possibility that we might be seeing white smoke and we might have a new pope. Of course, nobody knows, but I'd say there's definitely a feeling of expectation in the square today.
Do you have a good view of the chimney there? I know that the sun starts to go down at this time there behind the basilica, and it's just a little to the left of the chimney there as it starts going down.
So we're okay for now. The sun is actually still quite high to the point that I'm having to squint to see the chimney, but it's not quite blocking the chimney yet. So I think there's more risk of sunburn at the moment than of not seeing the chimney, but of course that'll change as the sun starts to go down and move kind of to be more over the chimney.
Well, I hope you have some sunglasses there too, because that sun is really strong. It's been strong these days, actually, as we go into the summer here. All right, Joe, anything else you'd like to add before we go back to you a little later?
Yeah, I mean, just to say, I've been talking to lots of people. You heard one of the conversations I had there with Father Matthew Bender, and one of the things that struck me about what he said was this idea that kind of feeling a sense of loss almost, or that there's something missing, right? This period of sede vacante when we don't have a pope. And that's something that's come up in a few conversations I've had with people, this idea that there's a void that somehow needs to be filled, and that partly explains maybe why so many people are here and waiting to see if we'll have a new pope.
Joe, we just have reports from the local authorities there. There are around 15,000 gathered there in the square as of now, as those numbers increase. And so it's we're going to be coming back to you very soon here just for an update on things. So thanks, Joe. And
great to speak to you, TJ.
Call us anytime, too, if you have any updates.
Sure. Bye-bye.
And as we continue our coverage here, I'd like to introduce a new guest we have here in studio with us. He's Dr. Timothy O'Donnell from the United States, and he's a visiting professor at the Angelicum University, the Pontifical Angelicum University here in Rome, and he also served 32 years as president of Christendom College in the United States. Dr. O'Donnell, thank you for joining us.
TJ, it's great to be with you all. Thank you.
How's this experience for you, being here not only as a visiting professor, but also for, as I've mentioned, these very powerful days, and now just over almost 10 days now we've been living through
It is
this.
very powerful. Even now looking at this chimney, I feel almost the way like a little kid would feel waiting for Santa Claus to come down. I mean, there's that sense of joyful expectation that something would happen because I've been here for 4 papal funerals now, and that sense of the sede vacante of not having a father is really... It really hits you hard. I remember we first came over here as students back in 1978. We arrived 2 days before the funeral of John Paul I. And I remember it had rained 3 horrible days, just torrential rain. And even during the funeral, it was still raining. I remember wood splatting on the coffin and that sense of desolation and that mournful bell at St. Peter's with that dung, dung. You just feel like, oh my gosh. But of course, that came with a burst of sunshine when John Paul was elected. But still, I think there is a real sense of loss, and that lingers at the very beginning. But I think as you begin to move forward, that begins to move away, and hope begins to spring up, and sort of longing that this is not an end. The church renews itself, and so this is going to be a great opportunity to see people once again. But being in Rome is always a great historic event that makes it extra special.
In fact, that's even my own experience as well. I mean, the sense of loss there is when we lost Pope Francis, when, as well, Pope Benedict or St. John Paul II, when we lost them, there's a certain emptiness you really, really felt, of course. Oh, yeah. But that's why I always feel like these 9 days of mourning, the traditional 9 days of mourning, are a powerful way to deal with that aspect of loss and to mourn the loss. But then now we're in the conclave, and there's this sense, that's why I say it's a sense of hope, because of renewal. There's going to be a new Peter to lead the church and to accompany us on this journey, and to keep all of us kind of as a united, keep all the sheep sort of united with a new shepherd. So
there was a definite sense of desolation. I remember when John Paul was elected, we made a promise, my wife and I, that wherever we were, we'd come back for the funeral when he died. We didn't know it was going to be 27 years later, but we did come back to that. And I remember it was just so sad because the power and the presence of John Paul was like, how could that ever be replaced? So we're standing there for the funeral, and you're trying to get a perspective on what this pontificate meant. And I remember there were media people going through the square, and there was a gentleman behind us who was from Poland. And the guy was going on asking different people, where are you from? Why are you here? And this Polish gentleman behind me just started to weep. And he said, I'm from Gdansk. He said, I would have crawled down to Rome on my hands and my knees. This man gave us our freedom. He gave us our dignity back again. And that's when I began to think, how can we possibly replace this Pope? So it was consoling to think how great, but it even added to that. But then, of course, God has his way. And then when Pope Benedict XVI comes out, you say, oh, thank you, Jesus. In other words, it goes on. And it sort of encapsulates the whole rhythm of life. And I think that's why people are really looking to Rome right now, because everything's sort of a soundbite. We're suffering from sort of like what I think Benedict called a cultural amnesia. We don't remember who we are, we're confused about our identity, and oftentimes we're looking at things and we don't know who we are. But what's happening right now, you see something that is permanent, something that has not changed. Even the antiquity of smoke coming up from a little chimney signifying a transition. People are hungry to know who they are and to understand the meaning of the past. And a lot of times we neglect history nowadays. I think it's something like 75% of college graduates in the United States graduate from college without ever taking a history course. That's devastating. So when you actually see this type of living history, I think people are naturally attracted to that. And that's why I think it is a great time for catechesis to talk about the longevity of the church, the beauty of the church, and the beauty and the richness of these traditions.
And Dr. Lev, what would you say in terms of if you had your own students right now and trying to help, especially students maybe who aren't as familiar with the Catholic Church or these how these processes work, how would you contextualize what's happening here to them?
Well, I agree with you, Tim. It's such an incredible moment to show the students living history. I mean, one of the things about the Catholic Church that I think maybe we take for granted, but is baffling to the rest of the world and incomprehensible at times to students, is that the man that we are waiting for will be the 267th Pope in a direct line. Where do you find stability? Where do you find a groundedness, a rootedness that continues over the course of centuries through political situations, geopolitical transformations, natural disasters, you name it, and yet we are still here waiting for that next successor? And that, since I'm an art historian, for what that builds into is when you look at a building like St. Peter's that starts with the hole of the ground where they buried St. Peter, you are looking at something that shows a series of monuments, one placed on top of the other in a direct line, all the way up to the top of Michelangelo's dome. And so the beauty stems from that continuity. It's this incredible story, this incredible lineage of the popes. It forms almost like the invisible scaffolding around which all of this beauty can be arranged.
I think there's a theological message in all of this too, because all of the everything that we know and we believe in starts with Jesus, and he suffered and he died and he rose again from the dead, and that's the basic message of our church, and we've stayed faithful to that message. There may be debates about certain pieces, but that's the center of our church. And I was thinking a great deal about how prophetic it was that Pope Francis chose hope, Pilgrims of Hope, as the theme of this Jubilee. And shortly before he went to the hospital on February 11th, he released the World Day of the Message for the Sick, the Day of the Sick. And the themes he touched in that are the very things that Doctor was talking about, and you're talking about, Doctor, as well, that suffering is part of our humanity. Christ overcame sin and death for us, but also that through suffering, so many times we find much more meaning and we find true love. The kind of love that Jesus has for us, we can give to each other as well. And I think those were themes that he must have been thinking about, because he already was not well when he released that message.
Well, that final moment, we were there on Easter Sunday, when after he spoke with great difficulty, but then they put up on the monitor, he's coming down, and the excitement of everybody, he's actually going to come down. Couldn't believe it. And I had a son and daughter here with their little baby, and the thought, it's going to be blessed by the Pope. But then he goes around and just not only just in the square, but then he goes out again to the peripheries, reaching out to everybody. And still in that condition, you can see he was in pain, he was suffering, and he's still taking babies in his arms and things. So what a powerful message and a beautiful message. And I think in some way that encapsulated the beauty of that pontificate, the sense of suffering and trying to give of himself, reaching out to the peripheries and the margins so that everyone could have a bit of him. And it's almost like I can't really be Pope if I can't be there for that Urbi et Orbi and be present with the people in the square. So even there, just pouring himself out in libation in a very beautiful way, very symbolic way, I thought.
He gave us a bit of him, but he also always focused it on Christ.
Oh, absolutely.
So he brought us back to Christ, and that was the end of this message for the world. That
suffer the little children to come to me, and they were still coming to him, which
Yes.
was a beautiful thing to see.
I would imagine, too, in this day and age, too, where unfortunately marked by so much polarization and so much vitriol, whether it's in social media, whether in the dialogues we have today, they are so divisive, unfortunately, and receive the most attention. Not the times when things are working and all, but would you say that this, what we're seeing here and what we were talking about just now, the world or many people would look to in some ways, because here we're talking about a message of hope, fundamentally, not of belief, but of hope, but also of being good to one another, of fraternity, as Pope Francis spoke about all the time. Do you think that this is drawing more attention because of our fractured world today?
I would say definitely that's the case. I mean, the Second Vatican Council said very clearly, when the Creator vanishes, when the Creator, we lose sight of the Creator, the creature vanishes. And that's what's happening right now. I mean, we're all brothers and sisters if God is recognized as our Father. But in so many instances, we're sort of pushing God out of the picture. There's sort of practical atheism that's dominating culture right now. And it shouldn't surprise us then. There's acts of violence. You have the terrible reality of abortion that we're seeing in our world. And all of these things are stemming from the fact that we no longer recognize that we are the product of a loving Creator who has endowed us with intellect, will. We're made in His image and likeness. And that has to be the foundation ultimately for any type of long-lasting peace, etc. And I think the Church, all of us who are Christians, have a serious obligation to try to communicate the dignity of the human person. And you realize the impact that Christianity has had down through the centuries. I mean, everyone loves the Colosseum, but you think what was going on in the Colosseum, talk about there has to be a certain horror when a Christian looks at that. The affront of human dignity would be entertained not only by martyrs, but by men killing and mutilating one another. But Christianity, through Telemachus and others, finally put a stop to that. And the hospitals, the orphanages, all these great things where we show care and concern for those who are suffering, those who are less fortunate, these are all the fruit of a Catholic civilization and a Catholic way of looking at things. And to the extent that that has weakened or we've lost that sense, I think we're seeing many of these problems begin to emerge once again in spades.
I think we have an incredible opportunity. I've been thinking about this over the past few days, actually, over the past 10 days. There's so much coverage about division, about politicking, about factions. I mean, the way that this conclave has been presented to the world, it seems like another streaming series. And I think many of the people who are wandering their way into the square are sort of feeling like they get to stand on the outskirts of a Hollywood movie or some sort of tawdry TV show. I think we really have an incredible opportunity to practice what we preach, in that when that new Holy Father comes out, this is the moment that we show unity, that this is really who we are. The Sistine Chapel actually is designed to really convey that message by pairing these two paintings on either side of the cardinal electors, where you have, Perugino's delivery of the keys and Botticelli's punishment of Korah. You have the punishment of Korah, where there's this conflict and fighting when Moses wants to pass his authority on to his brother, and the Korah family objects. And then you have Perugino, Matthew 16, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church," with the apostles standing around very nicely. So from within the conclave, the first message is to the cardinals themselves: if you accept this, we will have peace, we'll have regeneration. If you fight, we'll have chaos, and that chaos will spread outside. But now, post-Vatican II and our great hour of the laity, it's also our job as the laity to join around the Pope. Politicking is over, faction is over. We have a new Holy Father, and will we follow him together and show the world how it's done?
I have to agree. I think even what we were talking about before, and even what Father Bender, I think in the square was talking about with Joe, that social media does play a role in that, because a lot of people, I mean, younger generations, that's where we get a lot of our news, that's where we get a lot of our information, politics, whatever. I mean, even people are following the Smoke Watch through social media. And you're right that it can, I've seen a lot of reels, images where it can be very divisive. You know, it's maybe even lost the sense of it's a prayerful event. It's an event for unity. It's supposed to be something that should bring us all together. I mean, I was in the square earlier today, and hearing the different languages and the universality of the church in that, you know, seeing so many people, whether they were Catholic or not, coming here because someone told me when the Pope speaks, people listen, whether you're Catholic or not. He has a very big impact. And I think you're right that we as lay people, and Father, we have a role to use this as an opportunity to grow in unity and peace.
I could give you a very practical example of what you just said. When the Pope speaks, people listen. I worked as an attaché to the permanent mission of the Holy See in Geneva for 19 years, and I have to say, most of the time when they were making the governments made their different speeches, there'd be a buzz in the background. Everybody was talking, but when we raised that Holy See flag, they stopped talking. They wanted to know what the Holy See was saying. And I think that wasn't because we were saying it, but it was because that was the Pope speaking.
Well, he brings something to the political and the social order that they can't find within themselves. Unfortunately, there's been an impoverishment of our political discourse. And so the Pope can bring a message that is truly transcendent and goes beyond the different confines within these ideologies that oftentimes are tearing each other apart. And I think we're at a point now where people are really tired of those ideologies. We think about, you know, Russia and Ukraine and the horrible things going on there, what's going on in Gaza, but to have a voice that is able to communicate a higher purpose and say we need to rise and appeal to the better angels of ourselves. I mean, this is an important thing, and we really need. So whoever gets elected, I think there will be an outpouring of goodwill. There generally is, and I think it'll be a great chance to build unity in all of us because, as Catherine of Siena said, he's our sweet Christ on earth. That's the way we should approach this and rally around him. It could be a great opportunity for we as a church to do what we're supposed to do in bringing the message of the gospel and the salvation and the peace and the joy that is really part of that to a troubled world.
Monsignor Vitillo, any experiences you want to share? I mean, you've worked in many international forums at the UN and all, and on behalf of the Holy See there in Geneva as well, in terms of the how the papacy and how the words of the Pope are received and taken seriously, whether by believers or non-believers or people of other cultures.
Well, my own experience was that many of the UN officials were very, very interested in what the Holy See saw in things. And so many times there'd be private consultations with the papal nuncio and discussions that were not made public, but that really brought to real substance. Some of the discussions that had been going on about nuclear warfare and trying to get a ban on nuclear warfare started out by discussions between some of the world leaders, the UN people, and the papal nuncio at that time, and who's now Cardinal Silvano Tomasi, whom I was working with. So I think that's a good way of working. And a lot of times people are saying, well, why isn't the Holy See making a statement against this or that or condemning so-and-so? That's not the style of the Holy Father. And so we need to keep that style. And Cardinal Ray, I think, described perfectly in his homily, both for the funeral homily, but then especially the other day for the election of the Pope, the character of what we're looking for in a Pope. All popes, not just this next one. But so much he pointed about how this is not only for internal, this is for the whole world, and we need a person that can bring about peace in the whole world.
Amen.
I would even say this is a good opportunity then to really talk about how diverse the College of Cardinals and I mean the cardinal electors that are in the Sistine Chapel right now as we're waiting for the smoke. I mean, I saw the numbers that I think there's at least 15 countries that have cardinals participating in a conclave for the first time ever, which is such a beautiful thing. I mean, as we're saying, talking about unity and peace and reaching out to people. I mean, that's a legacy or an example of the universality of the church. And I don't know if you guys want to touch on that, but that's just something super unique about this conclave.
Well, it is the largest in history, and it's great. He always talked about going out to peripheries, and even in terms of selections of cardinals, that's what he did. And so I think there'll be definitely a certain richness that we have in this particular conclave, that there are so many cardinals from so many different diverse parts of the world, some which may have not have been represented within the College of Cardinals before. So that'll be part of, I think, Pope Francis's legacy. And so that's one of the reasons why I think predictions are ridiculous at this time. They generally are. I remember when John Paul got elected, we had a sheet of newspaper with 30 of the top candidates, and there was no Karol Wojtyła in that list. And so if it was true then, it's even more true now.
Yes, the scorecard is the scorecard mentality, but it's an old one. It's been around in Rome forever. Yeah. I think this there are a couple of things, both when you were describing earlier the last days of Pope Francis, that really paralleled the last days of Pope John Paul II, where you really did see the Pope pouring himself out. This idea of the Pope as libation and this extraordinary. I mean, Pope Francis, the whole pontificate was really he would go to audience and then get in the ambulance, and go to the hospital. I mean, he was quite a man. But that those last days where everybody could see the Pope giving himself completely to his people, to his flock. First of all, in a world where we're getting very confused about age and the value of people as they are older, I think that's a beautiful parallelism. The visibility of suffering, that instead of hiding them away, became something for people to really feel and experience. And I think also there's a continuity in this growth of the College of the Cardinals. I mean, we have been watching the representation of the College of the Cardinals, the growth of the Universal Church throughout the 20th century get larger and larger and larger. Now we've hit this really exciting new point where we have we've hit 15 new countries represented. We have voices coming from all over. But again, the plan was always that. And it really shouldn't be surprising. Forgive me if I bring everything back to art, but it's the only thing I know. But it shouldn't be surprising because, I stand in that Sistine Chapel shoulder to shoulder with people from all over the world. And they stand in that space where you have the invisible beginnings up on the ceiling. You have the invisible endings in front of you. It's always been meant to be that. Even in the painting of the Sibyls, you have Africa, Asia, Europe. The church has always been reaching out. And thanks to the new technology, thanks to transport, thanks to geopolitical transformations, this church is more effectively able to leaven in the furthest peripheries of the world.
In fact, it really struck me seeing the cardinals one by one taking their oath there in the Sistine Chapel, and just the diversity of their backgrounds and cultures that just was really striking. And what struck me too, just watching them one by one, in some ways they look like ordinary people in beautiful vestments and all, but one of them will be wearing white, most likely following this vote. And it's amazing how they can kind of take on, or the office takes a hold of them in a sense, or that they become, I don't want to say new people, but there's almost the ministry and the role they've accepted and are taking on becomes part of who they are, and it's almost like they take on a new and living personality, isn't it?
Historically, that's true. There have been a number of elections where they picked men that they thought would be transitional for a short time, and then they get in there. Of course, the whole church is praying for them at every Mass, so you have tons of prayer coming in, but they are energized by that. And some of the most dynamic popes that we had, they thought were going to be very short. I mean, Pius V was supposed to be a very short reign. Even someone like John the 23rd, who shocked everyone. I'm going to call the ecumenical council, and all of a sudden announce that on St. Paul, and everyone's, what? what are you doing? You know, you're supposed to be transitional. But here he goes, and he just goes through it. Now, he didn't see it to the end, but Paul VI came on. But no, this is common. But even like back in Acts of the Apostles, that when Peter was in prison, the whole church was praying for Peter. And we continue to do that. And I think there were a lot of graces flow into the person of the Holy Father. I mean, what an incredible office, what a burden to bear. You think that every morning you wake up and you're responsible for the Catholic Church throughout the entire world, all the dioceses, all the different things that are going on. That's why it's really crucial. Whoever gets elected, we immediately need to be praying fervently for him, for his strength, for his insight, for his courage, and that he will have a successful pontificate in the full spiritual sense of what we mean by success.
I really do think, though, I mean, he does leave himself behind. I mean, it's exactly what you said. He will not be the same man who goes into the room of tears when he comes out. He will have a new name. Everything gets left behind in that little room. His habits, his friends, his usual bedtime. It all goes away as the new man with the new name comes out. And he comes out. What do we see him wearing? We see him in that white cassock. I mean, he is literally, it's like the baptismal new returned, and then that red stole, that it's just this heavy red stole. I always see people looking at
Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum.
Look at it.
Habemus Papa.
Actually, they got plenty of white polyester stoles. You've got this brocade red rag. This is the Bible.
Eminentissimum ac reverendissimum Dominum Georgium Marium Sancte Romani Ecclesiae Cardinalem Bergoglio, qui sibi nomen imposuit Franciscum.
Let's remember that Jesus prepared Peter for that, and also the apostles appeared with the bishops by teaching them service at that Last Supper and showing them service by washing their feet. And here you had this kind of rough and tumble Peter who said, "No, you're not going to wash my feet. I don't know anybody." Well, then if you say you have to do it that, then I'm going to wash my head too. And yet, he was showing them that was to have service, and I think that we have to connect with the papal vocation. It is of service, and it's service to everyone in the world, and that all the more that Pope needs our prayers to be strong in all of that.
Yeah, Gregory the Great was the first one to use it. Servus servorum Dei, the servant of the servants of God.
Yes, exactly.
Beautiful expression.
And the challenge for any pope, because no pope can be everything to everyone. You know, everyone has expectations, and some say, "Well, I like this."
The story of Pope Francis is the story of a man who heard the call of service to God.
Have their own personality, which is transformed.
He is the pontiff, the bridge between God and humanity in the belief of Catholics. There is no other office in the world like the papacy.
Also be conscious of the incredibly complex and delicate role.
You can feel now a palpable tension here as they realize any vote now could bring a vote.
You brought it up a couple times.
Breaking news, we are looking at the smoke billowing out of the cast iron chimney above the Sistine Chapel.
And there are the bells that confirm.
There is a pope, a new pope.
Basilica. And right under that,
It's a sacred moment in the history of the Church for a billion Catholics around the world and for the world at large.
Which then symbolizes, the entire thing. He starts his pontificate with that right under him.
Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum. Habemus Papa.
They introduce in Latin the name of the Pope.
Georgium Marium.
Feed my sheep and lambs. And that reminds me of, again, new technology which gives us views of things that we didn't have before. When Pope Francis came out on the balcony, there was a shot that came from behind his head. So we saw what he saw. And you looked out into this sea of faces of people just looking up. And despite the fact that we joke about all the screens there, I remember that day, just all of those people with this expression of, who are you the one? Can you help me? I mean, just this feed me, literally. And so I think that's yes, I think it's a very important part of the art, telling the story of or underscoring the role of the Pope.
One of the beautiful things about Pope Francis that night also was, I remember he reached out to everyone and said, "Would you please pray for me?" And then there was a really about maybe 15, 20 seconds of silence, and everyone in the square, everyone had their head down and they were praying for him. And so that sense of receptivity was not only was there to impart, but as a brother in Christ, he was receiving as well, which is always a sign of humility, the willingness to receive. That was a beautiful, precious moment at the beginning of that pontificate as well.
In fact, the weight of the office itself must be frightening. And so when we speak of the Room of Tears, where the new Pope, who's accepted the election and to take on that role, has time to pray and to let it soak in. It's got to be, I imagine, the weight, the burden of it, even if sustained by grace, and it must be immense and massive, especially as they peer out on the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica there and seeing the crowds and seeing what all this entails.
I remember the day after Benedict was elected, he met with a group of Germans who had traveled there, and he referred to the whole conclave experience. He said, "As the guillotine continued to descend," and I just think, oh my gosh, this poor man. I mean, that's why your heart, it has to, whoever it is, your heart has to go out, because life is going to be very, very difficult, very, very difficult change. Like you said, there's going to come a time when you will be bound and you will be led where you would not go. And not everyone has been gung-ho wanting to be elected Pope. There have been reluctant ones. I think Benedict XVI tried 3 times to step down and retire from the Holy Office, his work there. But John Paul said, Jesus didn't get off the cross. I'm not retiring, and you're not either. But he soldiered through.
Also was very reluctant. He said he would refuse at the beginning of the conclave, and when the guillotine began to come down,
began to descend,
they saw him going, nope, and apparently he had to have a talking to.
But I think they're also very aware that they cannot solve all of the problems either for the church or for the world.
Sure.
And Pope John the 23rd talked about how after he tried and tried, he'd finally, in the evening, would say, "God, it's your church. I'm leaving this to you now, and I'm going to sleep." So I think that's the kind of thing that they have to learn and practice as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to take just a brief break here with a little music. We're still under a smoke watch. Okay, there's not a smoke warning yet, but there could be very soon. Who knows? So we'll be back with you in just a minute or two here to continue our coverage. And by the way, now 20,000 are gathered there in St. Peter's Square, and the numbers are increasing.
Before saying goodbye, we just want to also thank Dr. O'Donnell for joining us today, because he's going to be with his students from Christendom College to see whatever smoke comes out. So thank you so much.
A joy to be with you. God bless you all. Thank you
so
for the
much.
great work you're doing here. Appreciate it very much.
Deus meus, Deus meus, ut quid de reliquisti me?
Боже мій, чому ти мене покинув?
Boże mój, czemuś mnie opuścił?
Dio mio, perché mi hai abbandonato?
So after that wonderful little music break, we have information that the numbers in the square continue to rise, and just looking back, I want us to think about where we were the last conclave, or the last couple of conclaves, because as we were talking about before, times have changed, but the smoke remains the same, the chimney remains the same. But do you guys all remember where you were? Let's say for the conclave that elected John Paul II, because maybe people remember Benedict XVI. But John Paul II, I was not born yet, so.
Ouch.
I just have no memories.
I read in 1978. I was an age that was not good at outward contemplation and much more into perhaps who was the most interesting pop band of the time. So I just sort of found out at school. Also, I mean, to the social media question, these were things that the information was not as instantaneous. I mean, it really was sitting at the edge of your seat. There was something going on in Rome, in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. I still had my homework and had to go home and go to soccer practice, or all the different things. And so I think there's much less of a sense of where I was, because I was really so far away from it.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, we take for granted today instant communication, instant everything. And I find difficulty sometimes trying to say, well, what was it like before we had that sort of instant communication, high-res, super high-res, instant images? And so it was a different time than, of course, I was kind of, maybe 8th grade or something. And, so I don't remember too much of that conclave. But at the same time, it was a different time, of course, as you mentioned, because the media and instant communication wasn't what it is today.
I'm 78 years old, so I wasn't in high school at that time. I was a priest in my diocese and also going to social work school. But I was also directing a psychiatric treatment center for children. And so it was there that I was working, and I was in my office doing clinical records and things like that when one of the young children who was with us came to tell me that we had a pope. And then I think I mentioned earlier that he also told me that the pope was Polish, and I said, oh, Billy, don't be spreading those rumors around. And then he dragged me to the television I didn't have the time to go sit and watch television. Talking about John Paul II.
And then John Paul I. John Paul I. If I could rewind even a little more.
John Paul I, first of all, one of our child care workers called me later. I think you're thinking a month ago, so we have a poem
And so we'll go back deep into the archives of that radio, and we'll put a conclave that none of us were around. But before we do that, we want to say a special thank you to Dr. for being here and sharing art history, and how that plays a role in the conclave even today?
Well, it's been really great to be here. I mean, in a certain sense, you guys are the nerve center of it all. So it's an honor, actually, to be able to sit here and, of course, to really have the possibility to talk in a way that it's much harder. We do our best out there I think there's a whole squad of us out there trying to do our best in the secular media, but to really be able to talk about what it means to be the servant of God, what it means for Peter to have died here, what it means for these cardinals. I mean, it's so nice to be able to really talk about the true weight and importance of prayer and how we must pray for the Pope. So thank you for really, it's like a cleanse to come here. I'm ready to go back out and face questions about whether or not this conclave is like the movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The hot topic of the day.
At the same time, I often think sometimes the movie or even other media productions can offer an opportunity to say, okay, yeah, you saw that, you read that book, but in reality, this is how things unfolded in history. So sometimes I like to look at it as like, okay, we can use it as an opportunity to say, well, it's not exactly that way, but at the same time, some elements are true, some are not, but this is how it works. It's and it's created, certainly helped generate interest, I would say, and so I guess we have to
be grateful for that.
So returning to the question of art one last time, that is the joy of the Catholic imagination. The Catholic imagination can see through to the potential of almost anything. And so even though this is a tawdry story or it's an incorrect story, the Catholic imagination can find that pearl that is beautiful, good, and true and bring it out and turn it into something fruitful and wonderful. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
What a
Thank
great
you so much for
Thank
being
you.
with us here.
And so we will launch into this old interview that we have from our former colleague, Veronica Skarsbrick, with Father Martin Nolan, the one-time prior general of the Augustinian Order, who was actually in St. Peter's Square when Cardinal Angelo Roncalli was elected to the See of Peter on the 28th of October, 1958.
You're listening to Vatican Radio. I'm Veronica Skarsbrick. And I'm about to bring you an archive interview with Father Martin Nolan, one-time Prior General of the Augustinian Order, who was in St. Peter's Square when Cardinal Angelo Roncalli was elected to the See of Peter on the 28th of October, 1958. But why don't you listen to his memories of that day?
I think that really it's a memory of contrasts because Pius XII, as you know, was a man who greatly impressed the people by, I suppose, his isolation as well as everything else. It was very hard to get a private audience with him or to meet him personally, and so people, especially in Rome, adulated him as they saw him carried in on the Sedia Gestatoria at that time. So that when eventually he died, there was great mourning and regret. He died in Casa Gandolfo, and I remember well the day. And when eventually the conclave was called and the new pope was announced, people were, I suppose, almost visibly disappointed because the new pope didn't have the figure or the dignity, apparently, at first, of the pope that the church had lost.
You said that you remember well the day that the Pope died. Why?
Well, because there was a great amount of hoopla in the press. In fact, the Pope was out in Casa Gandolfo, as was usual, for his summer break, and some papers announced his death before he died. There was a certain amount of media scandalous coverage, especially because at that time the Pope in Casa Gandolfo was almost segregated from other parts of the church because he had his own kind of curia that ran Casa Gandolfo, Mother Pasqualina and some Jesuit fathers and a few others, and his own Dr. Galeazzi Lisi. And the communication between them and the media was not great, so that apparently some of the press anticipated his death, and others then, when he died, had many stories about it.
Getting back to Pope John the 23rd, you said that people were a bit disappointed to start with. I mean, we got this portly new pope instead of the austere and elegant figure of Pius XII, who introduced a whole new style into the papacy.
That's right. I remember I was in the square the night that he was elected, And as far as I remember, it took several days to elect him. There was confusion about the white and the black smoke. Nobody could quite make out which was white and which was black. But eventually the feeling got around that he was going to be elected, and I was over there when he was announced.
You knew who he was?
No, I did not know who he was. In fact, most people didn't know who he was because the announcement at that time was made in Latin. You know, Annuncio Vobis Gaudium Magnum, I announce you great joy. We have then elected a pope, and then they name him. But the people around me were saying, who is this man? Who is he? We've never heard of him before. And when eventually he arrived on the loggia and they saw this tiny figure barely able to look over the parapet, you know, they were saying, who
Why? We have smoke in St. Peter's Square now. So we will come back, and it looks to be
white.
We have
Look
a
at that
pope.
smoke streaming out.
This is good.
This is incredible news here, coming up here on 6:08 p.m. here in Rome at the Vatican, and we have white smoke streaming out.
And you can hear the crowds.
And we hear the crowds applauding there. As you can see, now we got the camera work on there.
Just crowds of people crying.
Is amazing. Here we are.
And celebrating this special moment.
Yeah, it's so white, so...
There was a brief moment where we were a little unsure, but it is confirmed it is white smoke.
We have white smoke here. A smoke warning.
A smoke warning. We're no longer watching.
Oh my goodness. I was walking out the door.
We're back with Dr.
Liz. I'm still out of breath from racing up here.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
I'm actually
flabbergasted.
Surprised
honestly.
as well, because given the complexity of the reality we were talking about,
Exactly.
and the many issues and the diversity. But here we are, and look at our drone footage there. We're just cruising over the roof of the Sistine Chapel.
Wow.
We see the crowds.
The bell's ringing.
The bells are ringing. It is 100% white smoke.
The white smoke. And I mean, as we were talking about before, the crowds are... it's the square's packed.
Yes.
It's incredible.
And that's probably small compared to what's coming in now.
And that smoke just scared away our seagulls there, the little family there that was just relaxing on Sistine Chapel roof there.
But actually, as you mentioned at the beginning, TJ, it seemed like they did know. They came back just for the white smoke.
Indeed. In fact, maybe they were giving us a kind of a secret, a bit of information that they knew that we didn't know. But here we are. And then a spectacular, sunny, brilliant evening here. And you can even see from the perspective of the crowds there in St. Peter's Square, the white smoke billowing from the chimney, even as the sun starts going down behind the dome of St. Peter's there.
Well, thanks be to God.
Honestly.
And this smoke will last at least about 6 minutes, 6.5 minutes. And with a light breeze there in the square, we can see it billowing down towards the square. And we've got now basically about, it's going to be 45 minutes to at least an hour at least before the new Pope, just elected,
so before we will know who...
to greet everyone. And so there's huge anticipation, naturally, of who will the new successor of St. Peter be.
Well, and I mean, as we were talking about before, you see the crowds filling the squares, but also the different people who have come. I mean, you can see the flags waving, people smiling. It's a big sign of, the universality of the church, but then also just how supportive people are in sense of being here for this moment.
And now we're going to have an invasion of Romans. They're going to be coming in. And, no, it's only natural and normal. I mean, you live here. So those who can
he's their
will be
bishop too.
What's that?
He's their bishop too.
Of course,
forget.
he's their bishop.
There you go.
And so they're going to be streaming into the square now. It's going to be filling up.
It will make for some interesting traffic around my house because if my recollection is correct, when they couldn't get any further, they just left their cars in the road.
There you go.
So there you are.
They were just there.
Just stop the cars
in the road. But there's nowhere else to go.
That's
except
true.
For here. So.
That's true.
Look at that billowing, thick white smoke there.
Oh, wow.
All the different flags.
I love the people ready with their flags just in case.
Yes.
My daughter said that the election of Pope Benedict XVI, her closest friend, they went to school right around the corner here, and her closest friend was German. And they went running out into the square, and out comes Joseph Ratzinger. She said her friend had this teeny tiny little, teenage girl purse. She pulled out of this purse this flag, this enormous flag. It was suddenly waving a German
Oh my
flag.
goodness.
So apparently a lot of people come prepared.
Yeah, that's the thing, because you just never know. I mean, when I was in the square earlier, people thought, oh no, it might be a longer time. It could take, days.
Yes,
You just don't know. You just don't know.
Yeah, you just don't know. In fact, I didn't know what to expect. At the same time, it's a wonderful surprise here to see the white smoke billowing there. And so after just, day and a half, basically.
Yeah.
And here we are.
It does make you feel like there's a wonderful sense of the noise stopped, the cameras went off, they went into the chapel, they prayed, and the Holy Spirit spoke. I mean, it just really gives us a great sense of confidence.
100%.
And indeed, this hope that's being realized, that we have a new shepherd, so to speak, someone to take on the reins there and to accompany us on this journey of our life journey. And it will be fascinating to see. As I say, you see the central lodge of St. Peter's Basilica. You see that's where the new pope will be appearing, as he traditionally does, to be announced that Abemus Papa, that we have a pope. And then the big surprise will be as he proceeds towards the central loggia, and we see who that cardinal is, now dressed in white.
Well, and for many people, they might be thinking, okay, why is there this long wait, as you mentioned, Thaddeus? Why is there this long wait in between when we see the white smoke and when the new pope, comes out into the loggia? And it's because there's a process that's going on right now.
There is a very long process, which will be the oath of allegiance of the cardinals, of which there are 132 now. And we saw how long it took for the oath to be for the conclave. I'm imagining it will take about that length for the oath of allegiance.
Well, and also, Liz, you had mentioned way before in our discussion, the Room of Tears, which has become very essential right now. So right now the new pope would have gone. Or is it after?
I would think that the ballots are burned after. I think he's already, and I think that's one of the reasons why this is kind of a funny hour.
Yeah. Right.
As it got to be past 5, I was thinking, well, I guess now we have to wait until 7. But I think this must have been the time that he spent in that Room of Tears, thinking about or preparing himself for what is. Look at that square, and that square is it's a microcosm of the millions, if not billions, who are watching, all of them fixed to see, some of them already Christians, Catholics, but other people who are really searching. And there is so much searching going on in the world. I don't know how many of the people that I've been working with in the secular media circles who talk about, well, I used to be Catholic, or I went to Catholic school, or I
I just have no memory.
Some or not, but this is height.
We
Look
have
Look at that smoke streaming out.
This is in St. Peter's Square now.
Oh, this time, but the people around me was the feeling and as far about it, and the Galeazzi of now Pisanity apparently died. There was great mourning and regret. He died in Casa Gandolfo, and I remember well the day. And when eventually the conclave was called and the new pope was announced, people were, I suppose, almost visibly disappointed because the new pope didn't have the figure or the dignity, apparently, at first, of the pope that the church had lost.
You said that you remember well the day that the pope died. Why?
Well, because there was a great amount of hoopla in the press. In fact, the Pope was out in Casa Gandolfo, as was usual, for his summer break, and some papers announced his scandalous coverage, especially from Casa Gandolfo. Dr. Galeazzi media wasn't as then when
instead of the
as far as I thought he was going to be You know, Nuncio Vobis Gaudium Magnum, I announce to your great joy. We have then elected a pope, and then they name him. But the people around me were saying, who is this man? Who is he? We've never heard of him before. And when eventually he arrived on the loggia, and they saw this tiny figure barely able to look over the parapet, you know, they were saying,
Why? We have smoke in St. Peter's Square now, so we will come back, and it looks to be
white.
We have
Look
a
at that
pope.
smoke streaming out.
This is good.
This is incredible news here, coming up here on 6:08 p.m. here in Rome at the Vatican, and we have white smoke streaming out.
And you can hear the crowds.
And we hear the crowds applauding there. As you can see, now we got the camera work on there.
Just crowds of people crying.
Is amazing. Here we are.
And celebrating this special moment.
Yeah, it's so white, so...
There was a brief moment where we were a little unsure, but it is confirmed it is white smoke.
We have white smoke here. A smoke warning.
A smoke warning. We're no longer watching.
Oh my goodness. I was walking out the door.
We're back with Dr.
Leslie. I'm still out of breath from racing up here.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
I'm actually
flabbergasted.
surprised
Honestly.
as well, because given the complexity of the reality we were talking about,
Exactly.
and the many issues and the diversity, but here we are, and look at our drone footage there. We're just cruising over the roof of the Sistine Chapel.
Wow.
We see the crowds.
The bells ringing.
The bells are ringing. It is 100% white smoke.
The white smoke. And I mean, as we were talking about before, the crowds are... it's the square's packed.
Yes.
It's incredible.
And that's probably small compared to what's coming in now.
And that smoke just scared away our seagulls there, the little family there that was just relaxing on Sistine Chapel roof there.
But actually, as you mentioned at the beginning, TJ, it seemed like they did know. They came back just for the white smoke.
Indeed. In fact, maybe they were giving us a kind of a secret, a bit of information that they knew that we didn't know. But here we are. And then a spectacular, sunny, brilliant evening here. And you can even see from the perspective of the crowds there in St. Peter's Square, the white smoke billowing from the chimney, even as the sun starts going down behind the dome of St. Peter's there.
Well, thanks be to God.
Honestly.
And this smoke will last at least about 6 minutes, 6.5 minutes. And with a light breeze there in the square, we can see it billowing down towards the square. And we've got now basically about, it's going to be 45 minutes to at least an hour at least before the new Pope, just elected,
So
appears
before we will know who...
to greet everyone. And so there's huge anticipation, naturally, of who will the new successor of St. Peter be.
Also, the are in sense of being here for this moment.
Yes.
And so, after just day and a half, basically, and here we are. We're just cruising over the roof of the Sistine Chapel. We see the crowds.
The bells ringing.
The bells are ringing. It is 100% white smoke.
The white smoke. And I mean, as we were talking about before, the crowds are... it's the square's packed.
Yes.
It's incredible.
And that's probably small compared to what's coming in now.
And that smoke just... were assuming it would be a little later when the smoke would come, whether white or black.
Yeah, that's right. So I was here on my phone trying to send back some of these interviews I've been doing, and I wasn't very successful at sending them back because the internet here is so slow. And so that was kind of what was on my mind, and suddenly I see the white smoke and nothing matters anymore. So it came as a surprise for me as well for that reason. What a moment. You can really feel it in the crowd here. Huge moment.
Well, amazing. And I mean, as you mentioned, there's still people running to the square, and there will be probably for a long time, Joe. I mean, because people will be flocking to see the new Pope coming.
Yeah, that's right. And all kinds of people here as well. I've been speaking to priests from all over. I spoke to a nun from Samoa throughout the island of Samoa. I spoke to a Buddhist monk, and that's one of the interviews that I wasn't able to send back to you guys.
Oh, wow.
I spoke to a Buddhist monk from Thailand who said he was in Rome by chance. He just happened to be in Rome visiting a friend, but he was in the square on purpose because he really wanted to be here. He said that although he's a Buddhist, that Pope Francis really meant a lot to him, and he said he was really hoping to see the successor. And yes, and so that was really nice. And he said he described it as a gesture of interreligious friendship. That's what he said to me. A gesture of interreligious friendship, solidarity. That's why he wanted to be here from Thailand, a Buddhist monk.
Beautiful. And our camera work here, we were just zooming in on that balcony from where the new Pope will appear. Joe, tell us about, when you're explaining to people in the square, what's next, what's going to happen? I'm sure people are asking you, so what happens? The Pope's new elected.
That's right, yeah. So I've been explaining to people exactly. So we know that right now the Pope is, he's got a few things to do before he appears on the loggia. So we'll have the Cardinal Protodeacon will come out, unless of course it's the Cardinal Protodeacon that's been elected, and he will give the Habemus Papam, the announcement in Latin. We'll hear said in Latin the name of whoever's been elected Pope, and people will be listening very carefully, trying to see if they can catch that name. And if they can't catch it, they'll see the Pope a moment afterwards, because the Protodeacon will leave the balcony, and the Pope will come out and he'll greet the people. He'll speak probably in Italian. He'll probably say a prayer and deliver his first address, and that's what everybody here now is waiting for, that moment when they see the new Pope for the first time.
And Joe, how about yourself? You're going to be there for us, aren't you? You're going to be staying there in the square.
Yeah, that's right. No, of course. I mean, CJ, there's nowhere else I would rather be in the world right now than right here in the square. So yeah, you couldn't move me from here if you tried. I'll be here.
Fantastic. And you'll be telling all your friends about this experience you're having here right now in the future, I'm sure.
Well, thanks so much, Joe.
Cheers, TJ.
Thank you, Joe. We're going to be back with you very soon for more update on all happening in the square there. So, Monsignor Wojtyla, tell us a bit about this experience for you now. I mean, this experiencing it live, the smoke coming out here, and now our great sense of anticipation for who the next Pope will be.
Well, it's just such a privilege to be here in Rome at this time, but also I probably felt closest to Pope Francis because I've served him in different ways, both as in my work at Caritas Internationalis, and then also at the Secretary General of the International Catholic Migration Commission. I always used to say he's the best guru you could ever have to do public relations on migrants and refugees, and I don't have to pay him a thing, So, and there were many times when I was able to meet him, and it was so beautiful an experience each time. So the emotions are more now than they were other times, because I loved the popes, but they were strange to me. I didn't know them so well. I met Pope John Paul II a couple times, but not as closely as working with Pope Francis. It's wonderful, it's exciting, and then it's a real privilege to be here at Vatican Radio and to have been part of our smoke watching together.
It's now smoke warning, of course. So, and a severe smoke warning.
Exactly.
And white smoke, that's makes it even more severe, so to speak. But it's severe good news, I like to joke and say.
Yes.
But
I think it's going to be very nice. I'm very happy that I was here. And just when I was walking out the door, and I just thought, I don't want to be alone in this moment.
Yes.
This is a moment of ecclesia. This is the moment of people gathered together. I'm going to run back upstairs and knock on the door and see if they'll help me back. I'm so happy to be able to share this moment, and I love this view of the square and all of these people who are gathering together in really a tremendous sense of rejoicing. This is after our 9 days of mourning, after the shock of Pope Francis's death, we are rejoicing again, and that is very lovely for a beautiful, beautiful day in Rome.
Yes.
Yeah, stunning. Actually, perfect weather, and I like to jokingly call this kind of weather severe good weather. It's just wonderful. It's sunny and brilliant, and of course, I remember in 2013 when Pope Francis was elected. It was during the evening. It was dark out, and it was still
cold.
Yes,
it
rather
was
cold and wet
and rainy.
And the sun set later, but it was illuminated with the lighting in the square. And now the even improved lighting they have on the basilica now. It's stunning. The square and the facade, how they've renewed and the lighting. But then it was illuminated by all the phones being held up and all. But here we have the brilliant sunlight illuminating all the people there in the square and growing in number. And now, Dr. Lev, tell us a bit about, I was thinking, the central loggia of the basilica there, and even the history behind it of the popes appearing from that loggia, from that balcony, and giving their most solemn blessing, Urbi et Orbi, which the new pope will impart after he greets the crowds there, that solemn blessing to the city, in Latin, to the city and the world. Which is
that's the first task. That's his first act, is to impart this blessing, because after all, he is the Pontifex Maximus. He is the bridge between heaven and earth. So today we'll see him in the facade of St. Peter's. And that facade, which was built, beautiful construction by Carlo Maderno from 1612, but even in some of the buildings in Rome you might not recognize actually have a loggia of benedictions. So there's a sort of strange side transept on St. John Lateran, because when the popes lived over there, that was where the pope would come out for the Orbi et Orbi blessing. Or even the church of San Marco in Piazza Venezia, where Pope Paul II lived, he also had a loggia of the benedictions placed into his house/church/ because the popes weren't officially living in the Vatican. And then even, what it means to have the Pope on that balcony. If we were in the early 20th century, the first conclaves of the 20th century, there was no Pope on the balcony, because during the so-called Roman question, after the unification of Italy in 1870, during those conclaves, while the newly formed Italian state and the ousted papal state confined within the walls of the Vatican, their tensions between the two of them meant that they would hold the conclave, send out some smoke, but you had to wait. You would not see the Pope appear in the square. And so when Pius XI appeared in that loggia, it was already a statement that things were about to change. So it's a very, very, very exciting moment. I remember, I think it was 2005, all the cardinals, when they first started to have lots and lots of cardinals, they were all trying to fit out on those openings of the balcony, and you were kind of looking at a couple of them like, that looks a little precarious.
Yes.
So let's hope they've worked out the placement, the placement out on the balconies this time.
Absolutely. Here we're seeing a long shot there, and crowds coming down the main avenue, Via della Conciliazione. There are security checks, of course, which is one reason that the crowds may kind of trickle in more than be running into the square. Unfortunately, it's absolutely necessary nowadays. So
sure, you could see them coming from the security now.
So there's a metal check and all, so we have to ensure the safety and security there in the square. So.
Well, and as we're seeing all this jubilation and excitement, sadly, we have to say goodbye to Liz.
I'm like those sports stars that keep quitting and then coming back. I mean, you'll probably see me back in like another 15 minutes.
Yeah, you are welcome to come back.
Or a bit like the seagull coming in and around the chimney.
I really like the sports star comparison better, but I'll handle seagull. Okay. Thank you so much once again. I'm so happy we got to share this moment together.
Thank you for being here with us.
Well, and as Liz mentioned before, when we were talking about what is happening now, what takes so long, I mean, according to John Paul II, I believe his Apostolic Constitution, right, Universi Dominici Gregis, there's a process that's happening, and it starts with the rite of acceptance, which already happened, because that's when we know we get the white smoke, because the Pope, the man that was elected, had to say yes.
And has to sign and have it certified.
Exactly. So isn't that, it's beautiful, right? We always talk about free will in the Catholic Church. Yes. He could say no, but this means that whoever we will see on the loggia has agreed, has said yes to this. And as you can hear, the crowds are coming, and we see...
the pontifical band there coming out, and the Swiss Guards, of course. There's always a traditional salute of the Vatican hymn or anthem to celebrate the occasion. It's part of the festivity of it, and we hear they're playing already and coming out there all in full uniform.
Well, and it's special. It's special too because these last more than 2 weeks, we've had the Swiss Guards present for certain things, but now they have a pope once again that they are protecting. That is their role, that is their mission, right? To be where the pope is and to protect him. And so this is extra special because now we see them coming out again to the piazza because we will have a pope.
Yes. You know, I live with 21 other priests in a residence, so all of us work in the Curia. And we've been sharing at breakfast how hard it is in the morning when we're celebrating Mass, and there's always a prayer in the canon of the Mass for the Pope. And, you know, we now have to skip over that, and it's like your tongue doesn't stop, you know. So now we can pray once again for the Pope as well.
Exactly.
Well, our predecessor popes can pray for us as well.
Exactly.
Intercede in ways.
Yes, that I'm sure of.
We hope and pray
for sure.
So again, the bands here will be coming in and playing the anthems, the hymns when the new pope appears, just like almost the Urbi et Orbi on an Easter or Christmas or solemn occasions.
That's right.
And so it's to be expected at this time, and we probably have another, it's at least a half hour before the earliest the new pope will appear from the central balcony there.
But also during this time too, there will be prayer too, and certainly the new pope will be praying, but also the cardinals will be praying with him too.
And we will all be praying as well. Everyone in the square will be praying.
Yes, exactly.
Around the world. All of you watching and listening from home, we join in prayer as well for this moment.
We do indeed. You can be sure even the new pope hears all this in the background because it's a lot of strong sound that's coming up there and then propagating up into the areas there in the buildings and just outside the loggia there as well. You can hear that. I know that from experience. You know,
right?
The sounds of the streets, the sounds of the square.
Well, and it must be a sign of. I mean, they must feel encouraged hearing the cheers, the music, because this is a big moment for anyone. And then to come out into the loggia and see thousands upon thousands of people. I mean, if public speaking is not your thing, that would be very intimidating. And so to hear the support of the band and the people clapping and cheering must be extra special for that person.
Absolutely, a huge encouragement as well. Apart from the weight of the office and accepting and realizing the challenge, the immense challenge that they'll be taking on and responsibility, but encouraged by what is the fanfare we're seeing and hearing in St. Peter's Square right now. And as I mentioned, the crowds are filtering in, going through their security check before that, but the square is slowly filling up there with people coming in last minute to be here. Of course, they're lucky they have a little time because we have about this almost 1 hour before the new pope will appear. And so we see in the blue there the gendarmes, the Vatican gendarmes and the band they have there, and then of course the Swiss Guard in uniform there in position. So
well, and just again behind the scenes, looking back behind all the process that's happening, I think is so interesting to think we're seeing the crowds waiting, cheering, trying to keep spirits up while they wait the hour or more until we know who the Pope is. And I think as we're talking about, prayer is also a central part of this aspect as well. I mean, before the Pope comes out, we see the first ceremony, the greeting, the Te Deum, where in the Sistine Chapel, after being dressed and saying yes, the Pope goes back to the Sistine Chapel and he takes a seat on a chair and a ceremony begins. And it's introduced with a greeting from the senior cardinal of the Order of Bishops, and then they read a passage from the Gospel, which, as we talked about with Liz and also Dr. O'Donnell, I mean, it grounds the mission of the Pope, the office of the Pope in the Gospel, in the message that Christ gave to Peter, feed my sheep, tend to my sheep. So I don't know, it's a really special moment, I think, when you look behind what's happening right now as we wait for the Pope.
And speaking of the ground, please.
Just in the unbroken line of passing the authority and the responsibility of the papacy from Peter all the way on.
And now, going on the ground there in the square, we have Sister Nina Krankic, who's from Croatia and is with us there in the square, and she works here at Vatican News and is going to share us tell us more about her own experience there in the square. Sister Nina, can you hear us?
All of our listeners, to all who are following us online now. Pretty amazing. I just arrived here at the St. Peter's with my colleague. We just rushed out of the building and we just arrived here. It's so many people already gathered here. There's the orchestra playing, as you probably can hear and see. The atmosphere is so getting warmed up, and it's incredible. We're going to take our place somewhere here among the people, and we're going to wait for that special moment that is going to happen very soon.
Sister Nina, you must have run out of the building there to get there in the square, because I mentioned the crowds coming in now there's got to be some bottleneck there, isn't there?
Yes, we ran out of the building. All the colleagues started screaming, "Let us out!" There was a white smoke, so we just ran out and ran through the crowd, and we're going now. We're here in front of St. Peter's, actually, so we have a pretty good position. So if we talk a little bit later, I can tell you more about what's going on. But you actually cannot arrive at the square now because there's so many people from all around the all parts of the home gathering here. So it's really hard to even enter the square at this moment. There's so many journalists. Everybody's doing their best and interviewing people all around. So pretty amazing to see.
So it must feel like a big party almost, I imagine, in some ways, doesn't it?
Now the Italians
are
coming in.
It's the biggest party that I would ever add. That's for sure. That's for sure.
And we can hear the bands there. We see the Italian Carabinieri band that's coming into the square as well. So I imagine it's adding to the festive atmosphere you're living there, isn't it?
It's very festive atmosphere, and even the Swiss guards are all here, and the music, the people, very festive, very, very beautiful, something beautiful to see.
All right, Sister Nina, thanks for giving us that update there, and we look forward to connecting with you there again when possible. We know how it's a little tough with the cell signal there, given all the people communicating live on their cell phones and the networks there being a bit saturated. But thank you.
Yeah,
and
I hope to talk to you soon. And you can still make it, people, if you're somewhere around, if you're somewhere close, you can still make it. So try to get on the square and don't miss this special moment.
Wonderful.
In time. And if you're watching in Diretta, don't stay with us and wait for that special moment that's falling.
And Sister Nina, by the way, this is your first experience of this type, isn't it? Your first conclave, and
yes.
So it must be extra special for you.
Oh, amazing. You know what, but even seeing that live, it's something so special, and seeing that many people. As we were coming here from the dicastery, from our building, I've actually seen people cry and screaming, Habemus Papa, and which was so touching, people running and crying, and, you feel that it's like a special moment in the history of the church and of the world. So it's something that it's just once in a lifetime. So I'm really grateful to be here now.
Wonderful. All righty, Sister Nina, thank you so much for sharing that with us, and we hope to touch base with you there shortly. Okay.
Thank you for calling me.
All right. In the meantime, good luck getting in the square there.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.
Well, and continuing, as we mentioned before, the atmosphere, but also what we're seeing. You see the bands, Father, as you mentioned, the Italians as well, coming up the stairs that we often saw the Pope Mobile drive up for general audiences. And shortly, we're not sure exactly when, but when the Pope comes out, there's a formula that is said in Latin, and for many of us, we might not have studied Latin in school. I mean, my Latin is quite rusty, so I don't know if maybe, Father, you know a bit more about what's going to be said, and for those who might not know, what is the formula? What is said?
Well, it says the proto-deacon, and they announced that the Pope was from Polonia, and this Italian woman crossed herself and said, "Grazie a Dio da Bologna."
Da Bologna.
That guy from Bologna. Yes. You didn't hear Polonia in Italian meaning Poland.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tricky. If you don't know Italian or Latin, it might be a bit confusing. But no, it's extra special, and as you mentioned, I mean, I remember watching with some of my colleagues here at the start of this week some of the compilations from the Habemus Papams that we have video or audio of, which is only in the last, just over 100 years that we have video, and it's been really interesting because whether you know Latin or not, you know that phrase and you know what it means. And so it's a big signal to a new chapter in the church.
And I'm thinking that the last announcement was by Cardinal Jean-Louis Touron, whom I worked with a great deal.
Oh, wow.
And he made that announcement, and it was so good. And he's gone home to heaven, but I'm sure he's now rejoicing once again tonight.
That's right. I remember him very well when he announced introduced Pope Francis, and I remember even hearing his name. I was wondering who, and then I looked it up very quickly because as always, it's a surprise.
Right.
It's a surprise,
and you don't know, because we have such a list of people, and as we've said throughout this entire Smoke Watch, that it's the Holy Spirit that guides the decision, and so we don't know till that moment.
Here we see a formation of the Italian military bands.
Yes. Wow.
Guardia di Finanza, Carabinieri. And then of course the gendarmes, the Vatican Gendarmerie, their own band, and then we have the Swiss Guards all in position there. We see the usually at a point after the Pope appears, so there'll be a mutual salute of both national anthems and hymns.
The retired
papal
preacher, and also then there's
Cardinal Raniero Cantalamessa looking at his phone there. We see
technology,
and then Capuchin Cardinal there,
and also Cardinal Sean from Boston.
Exactly,
O'Malley.
Exactly, Sean O'Malley.
Yes, yeah.
So here we are. The bands are playing, and we have an introduction here to the Vatican anthem. Oh no, the Italian anthem. Sorry about that.
That's true. So the hymns, the songs will be going on until we hear that famous line, "Habemus Papam," and we see the Pope come out on the balcony.
So we're hearing notes from the Italian national anthem, Fratelli d'Italia.
He must.
And we've just heard those, the Vatican hymn and then the Italian national anthem played, mutual salute between the two groups of bands. And now the mutual salute and greeting of both. This is just like when we see at Easter and at Christmas,
the Urbi et Orbi.
During the Urbi et Orbi, when the Pope gives his blessing to the city and to the world. And before that, his Christmas or Easter message. So the bands are lined up there as we await the curtains to be pulled back there from the central loggia of St. Peter's Basilica there.
And even though the Holy See is a separate country, it's important for Italy to be involved in this too, because he's also the Bishop of Rome. So it's his flock is in Rome as well.
Actually, just now taking off my headphones to hear some of the ambient sound, you could hear kind of the craziness that's going on outside. You could hear helicopters, ambulances, fire trucks, everything. And so, even at the end of Via Conciliazione, where we are, you can hear the excitement and the festivities that are happening outside.
Monsignor, I think some of that chimney smoke has gotten
to me, yes.
There's a lot of pollen in the air,
yeah,
so it's
definitely.
an allergy time here as we head into summer. But what a stunning view there. We have the sun just going down behind the facade of St. Peter's. It's always stunning, when it comes time to sunset there with, the facade facing east, but then when you're looking at the basilica and the sun going down behind it, it's always
so beautiful.
So beautiful, yeah.
But everybody's eyes are on this.
Yeah, everybody's looking up, waiting for the doors to open and then the white curtains to be pulled back.
Well, and there's actually a story about what's happening right now. Again, the Room of Tears, the Pope, the new Pope getting dressed, and we know that there are 3 sizes of the white cassocks because you don't know who's going to be elected, but you have to be prepared. And actually, one of our colleagues, Christopher Wells, who was on this morning actually on the Smoke Watch, was talking about Pope John the 23rd, and he was.
They had to let it out. Yes.
And actually, since it didn't fit, they had to tie it like a medical garment.
Exactly.
And so it's a funny little anecdote to just remember that. I mean, no one knows, and so everyone's prepared. But that's what's going on right now. They're trying on the garments, and they're seeing what's fitting.
And of course, they have different sizes available to start with.
Yes.
But sometimes
3
they might need
different,
adjusting, depending.
Exactly. We're all made in God's image and likeness in different sizes. So there you go.
See all those flags representing the different nations present. Also, it is the Jubilee of Hope, and so we have pilgrims here for Jubilee events over these days as well. I think I read about 15,000 for currently in Rome just for the Jubilee themed events. For pilgrimages that were organized well ahead of time.
Well, and we're hearing from our producer, Francesco Merlo, that they're looking outside our building, and as I mentioned, there's helicopters, but they're blocking off the roads, and that's what Liz was mentioning too. That people are stopping, and they're just trying to get to the square as fast as they can. So it's a moment of organized chaos a bit in the square and around the Vatican.
We have reports that there are people literally running to get into the square. And they will eventually, as they go through the checks and controls there. They do an extraordinary job of the crowd control as well, with these many people coming into St. Peter's Square and avoiding any potential problems or issues due to that. So.
Well, and that is, you have to think that, I mean, maybe everything has a purpose, right? Everything has a reason, because we have this time in between the white smoke and the Habemus Papam, maybe also for everyone to get to the square. It's a dual-edged sword. The new pope is being prepared and ready to go to the loggia, but it's also to let everyone who can get to the square to be there for that special moment.
And we're seeing it with our Vati drone footage here, as I'd like to call it. And you can see the square there. It's just wonderful. You can get a sense of the crowds, and then on the people kind of streaming in from the main avenue, Via della Conciliazione, and some of the side streets there.
Talking about the universality of the church, I just got a message from a UN official in Gaza, who's listening to this transmission, and so you could see how connected people are, and how grateful they are to be able to hear Vatican news as well.
Yeah, of course.
Well, we're grateful to have you here to say some nice, intelligent things for us.
I don't know.
As well as and give us some interesting input on all, and to share this experience. As we see the our drone footage there shows our Vati drone is showing the avenue there filling up with people, and as they come closer to the square, then they just go through a check there,
and all the flags are ready.
And Thaddeus, because since you've been, this is your third conclave in Rome.
In Rome, yes.
And
well,
so
I haven't been a conclave elsewhere.
No, but you've been in Rome.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
But have you ever had the opportunity, because I know working here, we're always pretty much in here, but have you ever had the chance to run out to the square or see the excitement?
For Pope Benedict, I was up there on the colonnade there. If you're looking here on the footage here, you can see here on the left side there on that colonnade there where the statues are, on top of the Charlemagne wing of the colonnade. I was up there and able to just view from that position where all the photographers, videographers were, or most of them anyway, accredited, to see him come out and greet the crowds and give his blessing. And I remember, this is a strange thing, but after that event, going back into the Vatican and running into Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio.
Oh my gosh!
This is long after probably about an hour after the blessing was given at the end of the. And I remember it distinctly because I knew the faces of all the cardinals, and so it was a.
Little did you know.
Little did I know. Little did I know. And then when there we see some of the cardinals there. There's Cardinal. I think that's Cardinal Wuerl, and we see, and then.
Cantalamessa,
and then
O'Malley.
The cardinal non-electors.
Yeah, exactly. They're over 80,
and
so
there's
they're non-electors.
Sister Petrina,
yes,
the head of the Governatorato now.
And that's Archbishop Fisichella as well, I think.
Yeah, we see the secretary of the dicastery for communication there, Monsignor Lucio Ruiz, as well. Anyway.
Well, and so. Was it? I mean, obviously it's very different being inside here, but the excitement is still pretty much the same, being on the braccio, the colonnade, and being
very
here.
much so, because you're seeing things up close, and not only into the bells I was mentioning earlier that you hear very clearly and loudly, but then seeing from a unique angle, almost at below the level of the central loggia, but higher up from in the square. In 2013, then I remember I was down the street on the Conciliazione looking out the window at the crowds on Via della Conciliazione, and I could see the central loggia from which Pope Francis appeared then in 2013. So that was my other experience, per se, and a unique one at that. And now here in our studio here, right close to the action there.
Exactly.
It's a third privileged experience. And again, what's really... you really feel is the excitement of it, and the joy of having a new pope, but then also the expectation: who's it going to be?
Right.
And I remember with Pope Benedict, it was a bit the weather was a bit cloudy and cool then. I mean, this is a day of just brilliant sunshine, mild temps. Of course, we're in May, and so things warm up here quite a bit and pretty quickly.
When Pope Francis was elected, I was helping out at an English-speaking parish in Geneva, in addition to my other work. And the pastor had asked me to give a talk to the parents of the First Communion children. And we got the news just as I was ready to start the talk. So I knew tonight I'm not going to get anything else done of this.
Wow. So you've gotten the announcement in different places all around the world.
Yes,
No, that's amazing. And every time just a tad different.
And we have joining us Father Paul Samasumo, who's from Zambia, and he's head of the English Africa section here at Vatican News and the Dicastery for Communication. Father Samasumo, good to have you here. Many of our listeners who listen to the liturgies will recognize your voice as well as you do the commentaries for the papal events. How's this experience for you now?
Thanks, TJ. Actually, I've been here all day. And then I went outside to meet someone, and you won't believe I got blocked. I could hardly come in. I've been trying to come back for the last 10 minutes, but fortunately the security forces allowed me when I showed my badge, and people are just running into the square. It's amazing. It's my first conclave. I've never. I came in just after Pope Francis had been elected.
Wow.
So this is quite an experience for you.
It is an experience for me as well, yeah.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Even just the moments leading up to this experience. I live in a house where some of the cardinals also were staying before they moved to Santa Marta. Of course, they had their own little tables, and sometimes we'll just provoke them. They had sought secrecy, of course, confidentiality, but it was so wonderful, and the dedication of them going to the congregations, the meetings, and even the non-electors, some of them live there permanently in our house. And we have some of the staff who have been helping. They had to also do the swearing in, so that they would be. Some of them couldn't go because they're small children and they wanted to stay next to their children. So it has been a great experience, even from that point of view.
Well, and also, since you're from Zambia, how do you think people in Africa, the African continent, are taking this moment? I mean, we have viewers, listeners from all around the world, but your experience in watching the conclave and being prepared for this Abemos Papa moment, like, what do you think is the atmosphere, the environment of people watching in Africa?
It's a great moment. I can tell you already I've received about 5 or 6 calls just within the space of 10 minutes as I was coming in.
Wow.
From some of my colleagues who are in the media. And I think the most, the call that I really enjoyed was from my uncle. My uncle is 82, and usually we talk to him through my aunt because he has a problem of hearing. But he's so excited. So everybody's following. They're following on various channels there, the national television stations, on radio, and so forth. It's a great moment. And knowing Africa, they've always been fascinated by the popes. I remember even from a time when I was a young boy myself in catechism, we used to be taught the anthem, the papal anthem.
Really?
Yeah.
So that was very familiar for you to hear.
Not this one, but there's an old one that was translated in our languages.
Oh, wonderful! Translated in your language.
Yes, yeah.
And your language or languages?
Exactly.
And what are your languages, by the way? Just out of.
Well, I'm from Zambia, and Zambia has 72 languages.
Oh my goodness!
Of which 8 or so are the main ones. Okay. That's widely spoken. English is the official language, so you can get by with that.
Fantastic. And I imagine people tune in even to our live streams, even if it's in Italian, Latin, or with your translation in English. I imagine it's a way to connect people. Tune in the same, even if they don't understand what's being said.
It is, and some directors of some of our Catholic radio stations. I'll give you an example. For in Kenya alone, there are about 11 Catholic radio stations.
Wow.
So they've been asking, what time is the smoke? Why are we having the smoke? Yeah.
Well, and it's really interesting now that we have you, Father Paul, in here, because as we heard from Father Bob, we had a message from Gaza, listening there, and then now you hearing messages from all over, and
exactly.
So it's the wide-reaching effect of this moment, and as the message or the theme that we've seen throughout our conversation has been universality, and how this is not just a moment for people here in Rome, and not just for Catholics, for people everywhere.
In fact, I'd like to thank people around the globe tuning into our live stream here. Maybe you're watching on a local or a national network, local Catholic radio, wherever you're listening. Thanks for joining us here. We're going to be providing you with all the information we can as we await this historic moment to find out who the new Pope is. And we'll know pretty soon. It's been about about a half hour or so since the
close
smoke.
to an hour.
An hour.
An hour? Okay.
It was around 6
Time
o'clock
flies.
Rome
Okay,
time.
There you are.
It was 6:07 or something.
Something like
So
that.
any moment now there. And we see the crowds are coming in to the square, still streaming in, slowly but surely. On the sides there, you can see on the right side and on the left side, after they've gone through the checks there, and then coming into the square. And they can all see things pretty well because there are these big television screens and good high-res ones too in the square and along the Conciliazione Avenue leading into the square. So many people, they can see just what we're seeing all together here. These same images and coverage. Sometimes there's some text message or some subtitling there and info for them, but they can get a good idea of what's happening even if they're not up close, thanks to the nice new technology we have out there.
Well, and I'm sure, as we all talked about before, and Father Paula, you would also, I'm sure, have experience with this, but using like the screens in the square, us doing this commentary, and you have to imagine that social media is blowing up with this moment,
Oh, yes.
I mean, everyone that's in the square is live streaming, I'm sure, taking videos, taking pictures, and so the news is spreading even faster than it would have 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Exactly. Even just here in Rome, just the streets, the cafes. What I found interesting is, I'm sure you've seen the guys that sell trinkets and stuff.
Sure.
Some of them are from Senegal, from Bangladesh, and so forth. And when the smoke came out, this guy asked me, "Do we have a pope?" And he said, "Do we have a pope?" I thought most of them are Muslims, but that kind of interest is really very touching. And I found very moving, to be honest, yeah.
Absolutely.
I have another story on that. When Pope John Paul II died, I told you I was on my way to Gambia, and I had to go through Senegal. So in Dakar, there was this long line that I was waiting to go in through immigration, and the guard pulled me out and said, the Pope has died. I said, yes, I know. So then he said, you come up to the front, and then he brought me to the official, and he said, you must have this father go through now because the Pope has died. And then he told me that he had a chapelet, a rosary from John Paul II because he was part of the police when John Paul II visited Dakar. Next morning, 5 o'clock, I'm back in the line because I have to then fly to Gambia. And again, he came, pulled me out of the line, got me through, is everything okay with you? It was really amazing. But you see, again, what the Pope means to so many people. And he told me he was Muslim, but, it was he was important religious leader.
Right, of course.
Again, I'm sure people around the world now are just tuning in, dropping in and out of this broadcast and other broadcasts to see what we're all waiting for with anticipation of who the new Pope is. And that should be very soon now. And we'll know, of course, not only from the video we have here, but then when the crowds let us know with their cheers and applause.
And it will be we'll all be trying to give you immediately the name of the cardinal, which has now become the Pope. And as I believe, TJ, you mentioned earlier, or no, Father Bob, you mentioned it will be in Latin. And so we'll all be brushing up on our Latin in between, now and then. So that's we will have the name correctly. And then we'll also get to hear the name that the new Pope chooses.
Yes.
To be
I
his
think
new...
the name is always also interesting because it kind of gives this vision of what he wants to do with the Papas. Probably not what he wants to do, but what he inspires him. And Father had an anecdote there. I also have one. And when Pope Francis chose the name Francis, one of the Jesuits in Zambia told me, we were so excited because we thought you were chosen Francis Xavier.
Yes. And actually, it was the next morning that Francis clarified that this was Francis of Assisi. So.
Yeah, it's true because a lot of people were trying to guess and figure it out.
That's right. When he met with journalists, he explained the origin of the name that he took and why.
Well, and it's special, like you mentioned, Father Paul, right? So it usually drives their an idea of what the focus might be for the pontificate, choosing this special name. And we had mentioned earlier, right, that the person, I think it was Liz that mentioned, the person becomes a new person in that sense. The Pope is a new man because he gets rid of the old name, takes on this new name, and he's no longer just cardinal whoever. He's the Pope of the Universal Church, the Pope that is the symbol of the Catholic Church around the world, not only because, he's known as the Pope, but also because of his white cassock that is widely recognizable.
We're seeing these camera shots. Those big television screens, people know when they're on camera, and so they have their moment of fame, their few seconds of fame, waving and greeting everyone there. So it's always kind of fun too. It brings a little involvement and participation for everyone.
And it's good that the authorities, I think they planned this very well. You have screens around the Vatican, so that reduces also the congestion. We have the new square, which has just been redone for the Jubilee year here. So there's another screen there, just outside this building. And people are just sitting out there. They are not rushing to go into the square. So they can see. And maybe they even get a better shot a better view from the screen there. So there are a number of these large screens surrounding the area. And I think it was very good planning on that part.
Yeah, wonderful, in fact. And then even just the organization, I'm always impressed with the crowd organization, how people are led into these areas to assure that they can get in. It might take a little time, but then also how everything has come off so well without a hitch.
Again, it was almost prophetic because so much of the reconfiguration of the square and Via della Conciliazione was done for the Jubilee, but it served very well for the funeral and now for the new Pope.
Yeah, the city has done all these works projects also to help traffic flow well through the area. And here we have...
Yes.
it looked like let's see here. That was Cardinal Schönborn, was it?
Yes, and then
also
Cardinal, who was the head of the Christian Unity.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can hear the helicopters. You can
Yes.
hear them in the square now.
Yeah.
So it's getting louder and more apparent that there's people from all over, and everyone's getting images of the square.
And I think the security forces trying to keep the peace,
Mhm.
and I noticed also they blocked some of the roads leading to so that people are running across the roads, you
Right.
know. So
Gotta keep them safe,
you
too.
You gotta keep them safe, right, Kelsey?
Well, and so one of our colleagues, Lisa Zengarini, she did a lot of research on why we have this tradition of changing the baptismal name of the cardinal into the name for the Pope. And it actually started way back,
It looks like there may be.
Yeah, 2,000 years ago to St. Peter, whose original name was Simon. And so it stems all the way from that. And it's a lineage that has been continuous since that time. And actually, what's interesting is that not all the popes have done this. Out of the 266 now, 267, only 129 have actually chosen a new name, which I never realized.
It was much later
Mhm.
before the new name, was put into practice.
There you go. And that was John the 12th,
Mhm.
Pope John the 12th. And only during that time, from 955 to today, it's only 2 other people that have not taken new names, which is interesting.
Very interesting, yes.
So we've gone from the smoke watch and warning now to the Pope watch.
Yes. We are on
the
a
new
Pope
watch
watch.
here from the central balcony, and I think we're coming up on prime time here. I think soon we should be seeing the new Pope appear, and we're getting some zooming. Some close-ups here of the crowds there, and we saw some Vatican officials. In fact, before.
TJ, I just also wanted. I
And
know
as well as the mayor of Rome is out there.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Gualtieri. That's right. Before that, we saw, was it Cardinal Casper, right? Christian Unity, we saw.
That's right.
In the
Casper,
square there.
yeah.
Casper, and then.
I was going to say that it's been interesting also from the time the Holy Father Pope Francis died, how the liturgies have been moving and preparing the people.
Yes.
Even yesterday's Mass, just, the prayers. We implore you, give us a shepherd pleasing to you, one who will lead us by example and lead us to the gospel truth. This is in the collect and in the closing prayers.
Yes.
So this conclave liturgy is also very elaborate and very moving and preparing the people. So it's not just like this is just a successor to Francis. This is actually, a transformation. This is going to be Peter now, who is going to be taking office.
That's right. Cardinal Ray said that in his homily, didn't he?
He did.
He's been such a gift during this time too, Cardinal Ray.
Cardinal Ray's incredible.
92 years old, full of energy, and beautiful homilies, really inspiring us and helping us live through this